So the Dallas Mavericks had kind of a disappointing and impressive end to their season. It was disappointing since they did blow a 2-0 lead against the Clippers, as well as a 3-2 lead against the Clippers. But what is impressive is the fact that in a series that most people didn't have them winning, they were able to push it to 7 games against a really good team. And in many moments of the series, they looked like they were in control. Luka simply didn't have enough help in certain moments. I think overall it's a huge positive for Dallas. I think this offseason, if they make certain moves, it can help them become legitimate NBA title contenders. So in today's video, I'll be naming some things that I believe the Dallas Mavericks should do this offseason to become title contenders. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and to my goal of 1,000 subscribers, and comment on this video so that The first thing the Dallas Mavericks should do this offseason, in my opinion, is part ways with kristaps Porzingus. If I told you just a few years ago that people actually thought Porzingus should be taken off this team, you probably would have called me crazy and said I know nothing about basketball. But Porzingus has simply just been so disappointing in his time with the Mavericks, because on the Knicks, he seemed like a player who could be a top 5 to 10 player in the NBA, and he looked like a for sure future superstar or a multiple-time all-star at best. But now he looks like at best an above average starter. When coming to the Mavericks, people thought he would be a second star besides Luka, and now there's recent reports that he's unhappy with the way he's being used in the offense. So in my opinion, I think it's pretty clear that there needs to be a move made. It kind of is sad and disappointing that Kristaps' trade value was at its absolute lowest right now with the way he played in the postseason and how he played in the regular season. On top of that, it's even lower than what it was at the trade deadline now, and this is mainly because Kristaps is looking like an average role player and he's being paid $27 million a year. So it's not going to be easy to find a team willing to take him off, because I think there will definitely be teams looking into a guy like him. Some teams maybe like the Chicago Bulls, who are pretty desperate for some talent and trying to make the postseason. I don't really know who they would give up, but it seems like a decent fit. There's also the Orlando Magic, who obviously would want some talent and maybe would want to make him a key piece to be a part of their rebuild. Maybe the Spurs would be interested in him because they need more talent on that team. Those are just some teams that I think are good fits for him, but I don't really know what those specific teams would give up. I think in return, Dallas should look into getting 2 role players who make significantly less money and some players who can contribute, or maybe they could even get some first round picks in return for Porzingus and save those for a future trade. But nonetheless, I actually think Porzingus needs to be taken off this team, because even when you look at the advanced stats, Dallas is a better team when he's not on the court, and this is due to him simply not being fantastic on the offensive end like he used to, and him being a pretty bad defender. And that's pretty weird, especially since he's a 7'3" agile and quick player. But if he keeps playing like this, he definitely has to get moved. But there is a chance that he could have a hard-working offseason and maybe have a resurgence year next year. I don't know, but in my opinion, I think moving out from him would be in the Mavericks' best interest. The second thing I believe the Dallas Mavericks need to do this offseason is looking into getting a second star player to play alongside Luka. And for obvious reasons, this would dramatically help this roster, because during the Clippers series, it was clear that the thing that the Mavericks were missing most, besides some good defenders, was a second star on this team. And as you can see, Luka was literally doing everything for this team. And if you want to win a championship, you can't have just one player doing everything. Ask the Houston Rockets. And I think if they had a second star who could consistently create their own shots and put a lot of pressure on the defense, it could have given Luka way more easier shots and just take less stress on him. Because a lot of people like to say that Luka choked in the fourth quarter, because at the end of the games in most of the fourth quarters, he was pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. But I could tell Luka isn't a player who folds under pressure. I don't ask how, I just could tell. He was clearly very gassed from carrying the team in the first 3 quarters, but if they got a second star alongside him, Luka could be effective in all 4 quarters, and it could allow him to get more rest. And in general, adding another all-star to this team just makes the team way better. And some stars I think they should look into is someone who has been talked about a little bit on social media, which is Damian Lillard, because it would be kind of a good fit, since Dame didn't have much help in Portland, and Luka didn't have much help on the Mavericks. So with Dame being the player who's been on his franchise forever, maybe he would be interested in requesting it. The third thing the Dallas Mavericks need to do this offseason is add more defenders to this team, because it was clear in that Clippers series that the Mavericks had absolutely no one who could check Kawhi or Paul George, and I would argue that they legitimately don't have at least one elite defender on their team. They probably don't even have a great one. Their best defender is probably Dorian Finney-Smith, and he's just a good perimeter defender. You can't be a great defensive team with him as your best player. You just can't, and we already know how good of an offensive team this Dallas team is, as they're a great shooting team, and they just have Luka Doncic. If you have him on your team, you're already going to be an above average offense. But if they could just fix their defense and turn into a top 10 or just an above average defense, it would really help them. They tried to do that last season when they traded Seth Curry for Josh Richardson, and looking back at it now, that was an absolutely horrible trade, since last year in the postseason Seth Curry was absolutely huge for them, and this year in the postseason Josh Richardson literally made no impact, and he was barely even in the rotation. So this offseason they need to look in getting some guys who can guard the perimeter better. They can maybe look into getting Kelly Oubre, who's a good perimeter defender. And I think getting open shots from Luka could benefit him and help him have a resurgence year. They can maybe look into getting Tony Snell, who's a pretty good defender. He's not a lockdown defender, but he's a pretty solid one. They also could look into getting Norman Powell, who's actually a guy who I think could be like a guy who averages 20 points for them and be kind of like a second star for them. He's not actually an all-star. He's like a very, very good role player, or very, very good starter, but he could really help this team if they were able to get him. They could look into getting Derrick Jones Jr., who's literally in the NBA just because of his defense and his energy. JaMychal Green's a very good defender who could play the 5 spot and be a versatile defender. Maybe they could look into getting Lonzo Ball, who they were rumored to get at the trade deadline, and he could be a guy who allows Luka to play off the ball more, and he's one of the better guard defenders in the league, and he can guard shooting guards, small forwards, and point guards. And in terms of centers, Nerlens Noel is a free agent, and he was one of the 7 or 8 best defenders in the whole league this season, and I think he should have been given more love for the Defensive Player of the Year voting. So he could honestly help them more than any player that I named previously, since a good defensive center is more important than a good defensive small forward, point guard, or shooting guard. And if Nerlens Noel is going to re-sign with the Knicks, which I actually think he will do, they could look into getting Rashawn Holmes, who I think is definitely going to be joining a new team this season. I don't think he's going to stay on the Kings unless they throw him a bag. And he's a pretty good defender, and he's really good at like rolling to the rim and stuff like that. So I think he would be a pretty solid addition. But nonetheless, Dallas definitely needs to make a move for some players who can defend the basketball, because there is many players out there who can do just that. But to conclude the video, the Dallas Mavericks really impressed me in the first round this year, and they did it last year too, because it showed me that Luka Doncic is a superstar in the NBA. I already knew that, but it just showed me that he's a little bit better than what I thought, and it showed me that Dallas is a team that currently constructed could have made it all the way to the NBA Finals this season. But in my opinion, they need to make a few more moves, because if they were to ever make it to the NBA Finals, first of all, they would probably lose to whoever came out the Eastern Conference, and even if they did somehow win, it kind of would be like a Miami Heat run or a 2011 Mavericks run, where they do successful that one year and then they aren't able to repeat the same success, since they weren't an amazing team in the first place. But they really need to get rid of Porzingus, the 7'3" Kyle Kuzma. They need to get Luka Doncic a second star, and they need to add more defenders to their roster to improve their defense. If they could do all those things, they definitely can be NBA title contenders. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know what you think the Mavericks should do this offseason. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and to try to grow 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video, start a conversation as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out.